Where are we at, Purple, as we welcome you?
Hello, Jim, Bill, Rosie.
The buys are gone. I said this off the
Thankfully.
top. Thank God for
Thankfully.
that. We now just get normal footy for the rest of the year.
It's a runway now that has the 9 games remaining and no more problems with reading the ladder at the end of it.
Agreed.
So we had 4 weeks of it, and as we know, prior to that, we'd had other weeks of it as well with opening rounds and other buys. And look, I felt what the AFL did yesterday when it came down and fined what Stephen May did the previous night. I was glad because I'm not going to sit here and hang Stephen May for what he did. He acted in the moment, but it was a bad moment, Bill, because of the messaging and the need and the sensitivities around anything to do with the head being treated seriously. And I think when the whistle went on that occasion, the free kick was going to be paid to Eddie Ford, and then Stephen May motioned that it hit him in the head. He got the free kick. So I'm glad, though, the AFL didn't walk past it, that they've given him a fine. And for those who haven't caught up with it, it was 1800s or thereabouts. With the acceptance of that, it will come down to 1200. But at least on record, he's been dealt with under the systems. So, Paddy Dangerfield will take his sling tackle, not sling tackle, dangerous tackle on Sam Walsh to the tribunal. We won't know an outcome of that until tomorrow night. So it's an interesting one. I felt we discussed it, I felt under the way that the AFL's wanted this to be played out, that he was going to cop a week. You had a slightly different view, Jim, didn't you?
Yeah, I thought he did everything he could to not
hold him
slam him into the ground. But in the end, that's what happened. Was he responsible for that? I would argue no. I reckon that's a $3,000 fine, not a week suspension.
And the other thing is the footy stuck under Walshy, so it's...
I think it did impact the way his head jolted back.
Right.
Yeah, and I'd imagine that's what the Geelong people right now are attempting to do with his presentations to the tribunal tomorrow
night.
Where's
Hawk at?
It's a worry for form, obviously, before the injury that was sustained on the Friday night. And look, the club's being very cagey about it in terms of what they're releasing publicly. There's damage done. He's going to miss football. They're yet to declare how many weeks. And he today has spoken, again, cagey around it, and he's got to process a few things. I get all that. But
if he's broken that navicular bone, then that's it.
It would appear to be it, wouldn't it? If
is that what we're hearing?
Well,
we don't know.
We don't know, and that's the issue. But we don't, as we know in Triple M, we don't like to venture into this space when we don't have the information per the official people attached to it. I'm keen to see what they do say. But all the narrative around it is there's going to be multiple weeks of football missed. And then you factor in the form that wasn't there with his performance. He's 4 goals short of a career 800.
Plus also your training load is severely hampered with a foot injury. You can't do much other than bloody sit on a bike. So it's going to be hard.
It's going to be really hard. Yeah. And just on the injury front, Tom Lynch, who was brought back into the Richmond team for the Dusty 300 2 weeks ago, he certainly aggravated something. It's not the injury that he had that kept him out for most of this season, hamstring-wise. It's the other leg. But as we know, you can sometimes favour the other.
So he's done a hammy on the other leg.
He's done something in that space, and that was the talk over the past week. And they had the bye, but it's now sort of filtering out that there's going to be some matches missed again as a result of another injury to him. So he's in all sorts when it comes to his body.
Just finishing on Hawk, it would be a great shame if that's the last game of footy he plays.
Yes.
Yeah.
After being an ornament, not only to Geelong, but to the game of footy.
Yep.
One of the great footy citizens, one of the great careers. You
On
don't
and off
always
the
choose how you... Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Don't always choose how you go out, but it'd be a shame.
It would. Bloody oath it would be.
It would be.
Yep.
Just on the injuries as we're talking here on this Monday, hope from a Collingwood perspective that Pendlebury and Myercheck and even maybe De Goey come back as soon as this week. So they've been smashed, as we know. They've had the bye as part of that. So could be back into the team. I thought the positives to start that way, Bill, as we like to do on a Monday.
Damien.
I'm going to package up 2 big men, and one of them doesn't get anywhere near the kudos I think he probably deserves, and I'm to blame. We're to blame. Oscar McInerney. Now, all the focus was on TDK, Tom DeConing, for what he did, and rightly so, because he's putting together some season, isn't he?
Yeah.
Some seriously good season. But Big O, the 3 goals, you called the game, Jim. He dominated proceedings over there in Adelaide.
And a good fella too. We get him quite regularly on Triple M footy. He's a ripper.
Yeah.
No, well targeted.
Well, he got the 10 coaches' votes too.
Oscar did.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to go past someone who, in the ruck, kicked 3 goals. The All-Australian, I feel, conversation still is focused on Gawn and Grundy, and I think they have had a breakout sort of performances to this point. But I reckon the past month from Tom De Koning, if one of those two just drops off, and they've had moments, he just could be in the conversation himself, Big TDK.
It was good watching him and Sam go at it.
It was great.
yeah.
Wasn't it? That was funny. Umpire let it go a bit too, I reckon.
Yeah.
I didn't mind that.
As we said on Saturday, I like the way Sam toiled. I know he was well beaten,
yeah.
but I think he got something out of the game.
He did.
It's hard to go past a positive referencing here without referencing Errol Goulden for his 41 touches, 1 goal, 12 marks, the nearly kilometre, which is not a stat I normally use when it comes to metres game, but when it's nearly a kilometre, it's worthy of mention.
That's
and
a freakish game of footy.
the matches he plays, it allows, and then Rowbottom's such a key part of that too, and he probably had one of his better games, Jim. But as you well know and regularly comment, without Rowbottom performing the negating roles that he does, Goulden, Heaney, and others,
Which is Kane Lambert.
Warner don't get off
what
the.
Kane Lambert did at Richmond. It's a very important role.
Was that Errol's third Brett Kirk medal in a row?
Consecutively, yeah.
Jeez.
It's a good effort, isn't it?
Bloody
Yeah,
hell.
given
I don't
the year.
know whether you talk about All-Australian, and this won't happen, Purple, because we know how the All-Australian team is selected, and it's unfortunate for the teams that are down the bottom. But Luke Davies-Uniacke is in the top handful of midfielders in our competition, and bar none, he should be in at least the squad for All-Australian. I don't know if he's going to be, but he bloody well should be.
It's a fair case to mount, Jim, and he was, again, very, very good, wasn't he, for North against Melbourne on Saturday night. They didn't get the win, North, but I felt his game alongside, I thought George Wardler was, again, very, very good. And I know it's obvious to say Harry Schuser with the 30 possessions he got and the 2 goals he kicked at key stages, and there's a really good origin. I thought Simpkin had a really good game too, but equally...
I mean, they just, they're getting there, slowly getting there, but I think Luke gets forgotten about a bit because he plays in the team that ranked 18. If he was playing for Carlton, he would be an All-Australian midfielder with what he's doing at the moment.
I think it's a fair comment because
Speaking
the
of
two
Carlton,
guys, Carlton, we just touched on TDK, but the role that Paddy Cripps is...
Oh, mate. The All-Australian midfield could easily be Grundy, Goulden, Warner, and Heaney.
It could well be. Yeah. It could well be. So
Carlton. They were very good. Pressure.
I mean, Cripps and Walsh will be, you'd think, somewhere as well.
Good luck.
Just on that North game, though, Jim, given that they won Melbourne, Viney's game was huge, I thought, under all circumstances. And Stephen May, we just spoke about him for the wrong reasons, but his role too was huge in that. And look, they didn't score in the last quarter, but sometimes you've just got to get a win. And it was ugly. And I think all the focus was on North's performance for the second consecutive week where they probably should have won but didn't. But Melbourne, you've just sometimes got to get the 4 premiership points, which they did. Equally at case here was what was required of Fremantle yesterday. They started badly against Gold Coast Suns, coming off the berating of their own coach and the stats chasing allegations that he made against them publicly in the lead up to the game, but they recovered and regrouped about the halfway stage of the first quarter, and then I felt had a really good 3.5 quarters. And while the Suns came late, Bill, I thought they did enough, and it was largely on the back of Andrew Brayshaw, who had a good, solid game throughout. And the brilliance of Hayden Young is something that's really come to the fore in the past 2 seasons. He was, again, really good. And Josh Tracy, if he can play like that, we're going to be talking about one of the great forwards. The problem he's had to this point of his career, the previous week was a major disappointment for him with the way he kicked that goal. So he's just got to find that middle ground. But if he can get near what he produced yesterday, he is going to be spoken about as an All-Australian forward himself in the future.
They call it a miss. A miss. All he does at the moment is a miss. Like, poor bastard, he couldn't miss a year ago.
Early on, what's happened there?
I don't know.
He kicked
You're
41.
the goal kicker.
Well, he's sleepy. He's got to wait. He's
sleepy.
He does. His eyes aren't right. Something wrong with his eyes. I'm gonna have a look at
More
him.
with Purple after this.
If we get to the negatives of
we
round
can't
15.
walk past what Essendon is doing. Now, you can question the quality of opponent, Bill, that they are beating. It's twice now West Coast that they've won against. North Melbourne, Richmond, St Kilda, Hawthorn when they were down, and Adelaide.
Yeah.
But they're third on the ladder, and a clear third on the ladder after the completion of round 15, and they're looking very nice.
When they play the Cats Saturday night at the G.
Massive game, isn't
the
it?
two Scott brothers going up against each other. Ross Lyon told me something once. He said the ladder never lies. So there you go. Essendon a third outright. Well done.
Sometimes
The
it
other
does,
thing
though.
is that doesn't lie is percentage. And they have the worst percentage of any team in the top 8. Or actually, Port, the only one worse.
Yeah.
So I think that even makes what they're doing better.
Yeah.
The fact that they haven't blown anyone out of the
No.
water, really. They just grind
Keep
away and
winning.
win.
And one of their good performances was actually a draw against Collingwood on Anzac Day. But Jake Stringer, 5 goals yesterday against West Coast. I love what he's doing this year. He's now got 29 for the year, which is a very, very solid output.
Yep.
Langford, as we know, who's become their resident goal kicker, he's got 30. So when you've got 2 guys of that nature kicking a combined 59 to this point, it's a really good job. And
Durham's a star.
I was going to mention Durham,
He's a
Jim.
star,
yeah,
people.
it's just an extraordinary story. He, as we
his
know,
story?
his story was he was a late starter from Seymour, I think it was, but he got picked
Mid-season
up
draft.
mid-season draft in 2021.
Wow.
Got a game within a fortnight or thereabouts of that particular season's draft, and then has only missed 1, 2, maybe 3 matches since. He's into the 60s now on games, and I'd argue he's not even near scratching the surface of where he could get
Well,
to.
you're talking about George Wardlaw before. Durham is a more advanced version of him. His attack on the footy is
ferocious.
ferocious.
But he's a really good ball user, isn't he?
Yeah, he
He's
is.
smart, got footy smarts. He weights
Well
his handballs and his kicks, and I just love watching him play and the energy he brings.
too.
All right, negatives.
All right,
Negatives,
come on.
Bill.
Here
Where
we
are we
go.
starting?
Well,
Of course.
I'll start with Kenny, actually. I was going to start with Geelong, but it was Kenny Hinkley. It's a look, you
Kenneth.
called the game, Jim, for Triple M, obviously, and you witnessed the booing, which I just can't cop it. I'm not a booer, and I get people feel the need to do it, but when you're doing it to your own, I do have an issue with.
Yep.
And they were doing it to poor old Kenny.
Well,
After-
unfortunately, with Port, I've always had this view. When they've got the game on their terms, they are blistering. They're great to watch. They ping the ball around. They explode out of stoppage. They do all the good-looking stuff,
Yep.
and they do it incredibly well. And on their day, put teams to the sword. What's always worried me about them is when teams get the game on their terms, not Port's,
Yep.
their ability to then grit their teeth and work their way out of that,
and turn it up.
I just don't see.
Yeah.
And that would be my biggest worry if I'm a Port fan is when on the weekend the Lions got hold of them and they did not give a yelp.
There's no resistance, was
No.
there? So that loss
So
to
that's
the...
not Ken's fault.
No, well, whose is it?
So the
though? Someone's
players on
gotta
the
take it.
ground, aren't they?
But when you've been there for 13 years, Bill, as you know, you don't need me to tell you that. And it's look, you can look at it another way too. They're 8 and 6, and still somehow in the 8 at the completion of
that's
the
a great
round.
thing with the ladder.
It
like
doesn't
even
lie.
The Cats are tumbling down. It
Yeah.
doesn't lie. But even if you're out of the 8, you're still a chance.
You are. And there were losses to GWS and Carlton in the previous 2 matches they'd played, and then they beat North, which at the time, North wasn't going as well as it has now in the past 3 weeks. And then they had the win against Hawthorn the week prior to that, but that was when they were 41 points down late in the third quarter. So it hasn't been a good 5 weeks for them when it's all said and done. It's not just the loss to Brisbane. It's not just the last 3 losses. It's the 5 weeks in totality, which I now package up, and there are concerns there.
They won't be happy over there. They're not. They're not a happy mob, Port, are they? If they start losing,
They reckon they're on this earth to win premierships.
they get
That
very
their
restless.
supporters do, don't they?
They're hard to win, as you know, Bill.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yes.
You know better than
And
anyone now.
even a game of footy's hard to win for your old club at the moment. And I say that because when you start 7-0, and it just looked as though here we go again, 2022 style, and then you fast forward 7 weeks, and they've only had 1 win in that ensuing 7 weeks, and to get to the point where they were just outclassed totally by Carlton in the most recent match on Friday night. Their midfield, it must be said, is a mess. Dangerfield came back after some weeks out with a soft tissue, but Guthrie's not there. Obviously, Joel Selwood retired 2 years ago, but the guys who have tried to replace them, they're just not working, Bill. I know Tanner Bruin was out, so he's had some positives to look at, but Jack Bowes has not emerged the way that I think he and they would wanted him to. Jai Clark is going to be a big work in progress. There's certainly some talent there, but it's not there apparent right now.
But
and
also the
they
ruck.
fall away. The ruck's a major problem.
Ruck's
Yeah.
So I think you just got to play Conway. You just got to keep playing. And you got to bring in a couple of kids. Nevitt's been good. The VFL is second on the ladder. They're going all right. And this young boy Humphreys that they're all talking about,
Will they unleash him soon?
I think they've got to unleash him this week. Saturday night, MCG. Just let him run. And
They
Nevitt's
miss
been
Guthrie a lot more
Yeah,
than
they
people
do.
realise.
But he
Cam
hasn't
Guthrie.
played like for a
No,
year now.
it's-
Yeah, it's
been-
been since 2022. When he did share a best and fairest in a premiership winning year, I get that. But
And the back line, they're leaking goals,
yeah,
which they never
that,
did.
And that's all because of Tom Stewart's lack of impact
Not
now.
all because
Oh,
of that.
I think it is, Bill. I think everything stems off that. I mean, Jack Henry's a shadow of what he was doing when Tom Stewart was winning All-Australian gongs. Colin Jasny, he's all at
Been
C2.
okay.
He's probably been okay,
Yeah, yeah.
actually. But again, when
Thank
Stewart's
God for
not
Max
good,
Holmes.
He's one shining light.
And Shannon Neal kicked 3, and he's the big forward that they'll look at.
He'll have to come in one
He'll
for,
have to come
for
in
Hawkins.
for Tom now.
Yeah, have to.
So at least if you got some kids,
Yeah.
that gives you a bit of hope.
There's been a similar slide too, not quite as dramatic as Geelong's, but GWS after round 5 was top of ladder. They were 5-0. They now have lost 3 of their next 9. Sorry, won only 3 of their next 9. So they too have problems. And again, with the absence of a key back in Sam Taylor's case, from a Giants perspective, Bill, that is throwing that team around dramatically. And outside of that, they've also been without Canelio for some time. But otherwise, they've been okay. Josh Kelly has been back now for 2 weeks, and while he was good in the first of those games back, it was against Port Adelaide, and they were just not a match for the Sydney Swans on the weekend, just gone.
Not at all. So it's strange, isn't it, when you look at some sides, what's happened to them, how they drop off. But it's a strange old year, by the way.
It is. And Melbourne too, again, we spoke about them before. They just held on against North Melbourne, got the win, but there's not a lot of joy there coming at the moment, the way I see it. And their problems are still... Yeah, he will come back as soon as this week, Bill. So that's a big
positive.
Make
a massive difference.
He will make
a massive difference. But they've still got those massive problems down forward. And we got to see what it looked like without, obviously, Angus Brayshaw, who we'd known off-season. But then first game without Christian Petrarca. I thought Rivers, as we talked about in the previewing of it, was good, but he's not a replacement for Petrarca, and they've got some major problems there. And I'll just finish today's negatives with Gold Coast, who just don't win away from home. And while they've got aspirations to make the top 8, and Damien Hardwick has been big on that publicly, so too have others around the footy club, they just do not win away from home. Big game this week.
You're right. Collingwood at Crow.
At home, yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah, but again, it won't prove anything in the big picture, even if they were to get the points against Collingwood, because it's the away record that is holding them back.
Righto.
All right,
Okay.
Purple. Very nice helping from you.
Just have a little
work.
dig here and there, don't you?
I've softened it down a little bit because you felt it was too negative there for a few years, and I've just tried to be positive.
Righto.
Yeah.
Righto, good.
Happy?
Bill Records.
All right, well, we'll move on then till next Monday. Thank you, Damo.
See you, Rosie.